Do you also believe that everything happens for a reason? I was never one of those people who believed in fate, but that day, hell, I refused to believe that I'm only alive because of the mercy of a psychopath who wasn't in his right mind. My name is Roy, and I was working at McDonald's in San Ysidro during the massacre of '84. But this story is not about that horrible massacre that took the lives of 21 people, but about my experience with the psychopath in the days leading up to it. I was quite young at the time, and a job at McDonald's paid well. It wasn't my destiny to spend my whole life there either. It was a simple routine job that helped me pay the bills. Among the regular customers were James Huberty. He came in almost every day, always alone, always ordering the same thing: a cheeseburger, medium fries, and a Coke. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were laden with paranoia and always made my hair stand on end. Huberty was not an easy man to ignore. He had a haunting presence, a kind of dark aura that seemed to follow him wherever he went. The other employees always kept their distance, glancing nervously at each other whenever he came in. Rumor had it that he had been fired from several jobs and was having problems at home, but no one dared to ask him directly. What bothered me most was the way his eyes roamed the place, as if he was looking for something or someone in every nook and cranny. Huberty was always a paranoid man. He felt that everyone, especially the government, was watching him and even conspiring against him. Huberty had a very bad relationship with all the employees, but they couldn't fire him, since so far he hadn't done anything serious enough to be banned. In any case, all of us who worked there knew that sooner or later he would be. It was only a matter of time before Huberty hurt someone, and to our surprise, he did a lot more than that. When Huberty would come in, I was usually the one who would go to him. I was the one who saw Huberty as a poor man, someone who should be locked up in a mental institution to get the help he needed. I was the only one who wasn't afraid of him, and that's why Huberty came to respect me. Although there were days when his paranoia was so high that he didn't even recognize me. One afternoon, after his usual order, he stared at me. His eyes were two dark wells of distrust and fear. He leaned forward and in a hoarse whisper spoke to me. "Let's get this over with. Tell me the truth. Are you with the government?" I froze for a moment, trying to process the question. James looked more nervous than usual, his face sweaty and his hands shaking. "No, man, I just work here. I don't work with the government, nor do I intend to. Does that calm you down?" "No, because I know you're lying to me. Seriously, tell me the truth, and don't lie to me. I know I'm being watched. I know I'm being watched. I can feel it." "James, how long have you been coming here? I always treat you the best way and leave you alone to eat. Trust me, I'm not with the government, okay?" "It's okay. I believe you." I nodded slowly, not knowing what else to say. James picked up his food and left, but I could understand all of James's gestures. It was obvious that he didn't believe me in the slightest. That day ended normally. After lunch, James simply got up and left. That day was quieter, and to my surprise, the next day, he didn't go. We didn't hear from him for a while. Everything was going back to normal at McDonald's, until I saw him again. A few days passed, I finished my shift and went out the back door. It was a quiet afternoon, the sun was starting to go down, and the parking lot was almost empty. Suddenly, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. Before I could turn around, I felt a sharp blow to the back of my head that sent me crashing to the ground. As I tried to get up, I saw James standing over me, his face marred by uncontrollable rage and fear. He had a baseball bat in his hand. "I trusted you! Why did you lie to me? I know you're with them!" "No, James, I swear I'm not!" The bat came down hard, impacting against my arm. I felt a sharp pain as if it had broken into 1,000 pieces. I screamed, but the parking lot was empty. No one was coming to help me. James continued his attack, his movements increasingly frantic and uncoordinated. Each blow was harder than the last. I could see in his eyes how the rage was leaving, replaced by eyes that showed utter madness. James was losing his mind. I could see him foaming at the mouth. He was like a rabid animal that was already so focused on hitting me that he wasn't even aiming. He could hit me in the arm, hit me in the leg, hit me in the head and kill me, or even miss and hit the ground. I tried to roll to the side to escape his blows, but he followed me, raising the bat again and again. I felt every bone in my body break with each impact, and my vision began to blur. In the distance, I heard the sound of a car passing by, but no one was stopping. They weren't even noticing what was happening since we were in the back of the McDonald's. I had to do something. If James hadn't caught me by surprise, I probably would have been able to get the bat out of him, but it was too late. My bones were broken and I could barely move, only to complain about the terrible pain I was in. Suddenly, James stopped. He froze completely. His breathing was heavy and ragged, his eyes wilder than ever. He just stood there, staring at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. For a moment I thought he was done, that he wouldn't hurt me anymore, and he came to. He recognized me. He had probably realized by now that I wasn't with the government or watching him. But then he dropped the bat and pulled a knife out of his pocket, a long, sharp kitchen knife. I can't let them catch me. He raised the knife and this time brought it down directly on my abdomen. The pain was excruciating, a burning that went all the way through me. I tried to scream, but only a choked moan came out. Please. James, I told you I'm not from the government. I won't do anything to you. James didn't even look me in the eyes to answer me. Instead, he took a second to turn around and look behind him, then looked around. This man was suffering from another one of his paranoia episodes, but this was the strongest I'd ever seen in my life. Of course you're going to tell me that, but even if you're not from the government, you've seen too much already. You will surely accuse me of them. I'm sorry, but I can't let you live. The world around me began to fade. My thoughts became blurred and confused. I could only think of surviving, of finding a way to escape from this man who had become a monster. Suddenly, I heard a police siren behind me and a car speeding up. Damn! I knew you were with them! Damn it! I won't get caught! You hear me? They have nothing on me! It's their word against mine! Immediately after that, the man ran away, leaving me bleeding on the floor as I slowly lost consciousness. I had no partner nearby, I was feeling very tired, and my whole body ached. I tried to get up, but my body was no longer responding. My eyes began to close. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, surrounded by machines and lights. My body was in a mass of pain, and I could barely move. A doctor explained to me that I had suffered multiple fractures and contusions, and that it was a miracle I was alive. It seems that when I collapsed, a fellow worker came out to his break and saw me on the floor, almost dead. That siren that James had heard was the police siren, but they hadn't put it on to get him. It was just a quirk of fate that saved my life. I didn't go to work the next day. I could barely move, and the thought of going back to that place filled me with indescribable terror. Want more signs of fate? It was on that day that the massacre occurred. I watched the news from my hospital bed, the screen showing scenes of horror and mayhem. Huberty had entered the McDonald's armed to the teeth and had begun shooting anyone who moved. The final tally of dead and wounded was devastating. I never saw James Huberty again. He died that day, shot by the police, but I still remember his face perfectly. His eyes were full of paranoia, his nervous face, the constant movements of his hand. James Huberty may have become a ruthless killer in his last moments of life, but it still doesn't change my opinion of him. This man is also a victim who did not receive the treatment and support he should have received. And for that, not only did he pay, but so did 21 other people. This story is based on James Huberty, who is infamous for perpetrating the 1984 San Isidro McDonald's massacre, one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. On July 18, 1984, Huberty entered the restaurant armed with several guns and opened fire indiscriminately, killing 21 people and wounding 19 others before being shot by police. Prior to the massacre, Huberty had shown signs of mental instability and violent behavior and was deeply paranoid about the government. He believed that the authorities were conspiring against him and that the government was constantly watching him. This paranoia exacerbated his mental instability, driving him to an act of extreme violence. His attack left a deep wound in the San Isidro community and remains a painful reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness and gun violence. As we grow up, we are educated to live as safe as possible. Be careful crossing the street. Don't talk to strangers. Don't fight with anyone. No matter where they are from, we always hear those things to avoid a tragedy. But you know, as careful as we are when tragedy knocks on your door, it's a tragedy that seeks you out. And at that moment, no matter how careful you are, it will find you. My name is Ben, and I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm extremely fearful and careful. To give you an idea, when I first started working at McDonald's, I was one of the few who preferred to be working in the kitchen alone so I wouldn't interact with the customers. My coworkers thought I was weird, but they still accepted me and I trusted them. That would almost cost me my life, as one coworker, Soleiman Alibeta, was facing his demons. Soleiman was an ordinary man, young, quiet, and quite pleasant. From time to time he had strange attitudes, like going to the bathroom and locking himself in for long periods. I guess it was to sneak off to sleep in the toilet, which is more normal than you might think. None of us knew what Soleiman was going through until one day it was too late. The day Soleiman Alibeta lost his mind started like any other day at McDonald's. He was quieter than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I thought he was probably sleepy, or maybe he had a fight at home. The night went on as normal until almost all the employees left and only Soleiman, Josh, and I were left. It was a quiet night, with few customers. Josh was at the cash register and I was manning the grill. Soleiman was in charge of the fries. Everything seemed to be going well until Josh took his break and went outside to smoke a cigarette. Soleiman moved to the cash register, and in that transition I noticed that something about him was worse than I thought. His eyes looked lost, his arms and legs were shaking, and he could barely keep his balance. I asked him if he was okay, and he said yes. I didn't believe him, but I decided to look at him carefully in case something was wrong. I took advantage of the fact that there was no more customers to tidy up the kitchen. Sooner or later, someone would arrive, and because of that person, we would probably close a little later. That always happened, so I tried to keep everything as tidy as possible. I was cleaning the floor, when suddenly I saw something I wished I hadn't seen. Soleiman was standing outside the cash register at the entrance to the kitchen. He was completely paralyzed and looking down with a machete in his hand. My legs froze. "Hey! What are you doing with that?" He looked up and his eyes were wild. His gaze hovered between desperation and madness. It was the most terrifying look I had ever seen in my life. Without a word, Soleiman closed the kitchen door and turned off the lights. We were completely in the dark. I swear I was completely paralyzed with terror. Soleiman was taking small steps in my direction. The sound was very clear because as he walked towards me, I could hear nervous and accelerated breathing. I didn't understand what was happening, but my survival instinct kicked in. I had to get out of that kitchen. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I tried to move stealthily. As I tried to leave, Soleiman used his machete and struck hard at the position I was originally in. I hid behind the supply boxes, trying to hold my breath. I could hear his footsteps approaching, slow and surprisingly patient, but his breathing gave him away. I tried to move deeper into the kitchen, but the noises of Soleiman tapping the machete against the metal surfaces sounded everywhere. His voice began to rise, speaking to someone who wasn't there. "Yes, I told you I will. Don't chicken out now, Soleiman. I want him dead. I want him torn to pieces on the ground." "Yes, I told you I will. Stop bothering me. You're getting on my nerves." That wasn't Soleiman's voice. Who was he talking to? Was there someone else in the kitchen? No, I was sure there was no one else. My eyes were beginning to adjust to the darkness, and I could only see his shadow. The talking was from the same person, but with two different voices. "After this, I'm in, right?" "Yes, that's the pact. But you must impress me. You have to make sure his guts paint the whole wall of this place." "What about the police?" "You'll be fine. Now get to work." As their chatter continued, I could hear Soleiman's footsteps. They were getting closer and closer. I knew that at any moment he would find me. I had to act. In an act of desperation, I grabbed a spatula from the ground and prepared to defend myself. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. My attacker was convinced that he had to kill me, and I had to be prepared for the same. When Soleiman was close enough, I lunged at him, trying to hit his arm. I lunged and caught him off guard. The machete fell to the ground, and we both struggled in the darkness. I could feel his enormous strength pushing me back. He was much stronger than me. "Damn it! Don't let this kid stop you! Kill him! You have to kill him! You have to kill them all!" I know! Suddenly, Soleimane made even more force and threw me backward. Soleimane got up easily and grabbed the machete from the floor. I was completely paralyzed. I had left all my determination in that short fight. I had nothing left. I was so scared, my only reaction was to start crying. I cried like I had never cried in my life. I knew I was about to die. Soleimane was a sadist. He didn't kill me at that moment, but he approached me very slowly, as if letting me live my last seconds of life, enjoying my terror. Once he was next to me, the psychopath caressed my neck with his machete. I closed my eyes. I knew what was about to happen to me. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see the moment when he wielded the machete and, as he had promised, cut my guts open. At that point, I could only ask for a quick death, although the words didn't even come out of my mouth. I could hear how he raised his machete to kill me. It was the end. But suddenly, something stopped him.
No! Don't kill him!
What? Why? He's right in front of me. Aside from the fear I had, I was shocked at what I was seeing. In a matter of seconds, Soleimane changed his voice and facial expressions just to talk to himself. This was no demon or supernatural force. Soleimane had lost his mind.
He is not worth it!
Look at him. He's pathetic. He's no longer fighting for his life. He's just lying on the ground, pissing and crying, waiting for you to kill him. He's not worthy of our gift. You must go for the other one. Can I kill him anyway? He's a witness.
No! You will not shed blood on our behalf for someone we don't care about.
We don't care who sees you. This is way beyond your earthly affairs. All right, I'll get Josh. Completely ignoring me, pretending I wasn't there, Soleimane got up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me trembling on the floor. I could hear his footsteps heading toward the back. My heart sank as I realized Josh was outside smoking. I tried to get up and follow him, but my legs wouldn't respond. I fell to the ground. Were my legs not working, or was I too scared to go? I tried to get up, but I was shaking too much. I started to get dizzy, which made it even harder to warn Josh. I tried to scream, but I swear I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. I felt completely useless and helpless to warn my friend about what was about to happen to him. Finally, I mustered the strength to get up and walk as best I could behind Soleimane. Despite my panic attack, I managed to get outside, trying to scream, but only speaking softly. Josh, watch out. Soleimane, he's crazy. As soon as I took my first steps outside, it was too late. Josh's screams began to fill the air. Soleimane, with his machete covered in blood, was beating Josh's body, who was not dead yet, but I witnessed his attacker slashing his stomach open with his machete. Josh had a look of pain and disbelief in his eyes, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare, while Soleimane was filling more and more with blood, and Josh's gaze was frozen in his gut. He was already dead. As soon as he finished his killing spree, Soleimane stared at me, but after a few seconds, he began to ignore me. The young killer took out his phone and called the police. I have killed someone. Come immediately. As Soleimane gave them the address, all I could do was watch him stand there, staring indistinctly at the sky next to Josh's fresh corpse. When the police arrived, Soleimane was taken away and I was questioned. I told them everything that had happened. Even the cops were shocked. Every time I close my eyes, I see the darkness of that night and Soleimane swinging his machete at me. Almost every day I have nightmares about it. Today, I am an even more fearful person than before. I used to believe that you could stop terrible things from happening to you if you were careful. That day, I understood that no matter what, when your time comes, there is nothing you can do about it. This story is based on the murder of Josh Burns at the hands of Soleimane Alibeta. While Josh was smoking a cigarette on his break, Soleimane came after him with a machete and brutally murdered him. Shortly thereafter, Soleimane was diagnosed with schizophrenia. After committing the murder, he maintained that he did not want to kill Josh, but the voices in his head compelled him to do so. Hello, my name is Jake, and like many of you may have done for a while, I worked at McDonald's. To be honest, it wasn't the best job in the world, but it paid the bills and gave me some extra money to hang out with my friends on the weekends. However, everything changed one night when I was assigned to the closing shift. It was a night like any other night. The restaurant was full of noisy customers, there was a lot of fried food smell, and the constant sound of the fryer and music from the speakers repeated endlessly and made my head hurt. Despite that, everything was going well until I heard a strange noise coming from the children's play area. Intrigued, I went over to investigate, thinking that perhaps a child had wandered in where they shouldn't have. I felt very uncomfortable with what was in front of me. In the darkest corner of the playground was the Ronald McDonald animatronic. This was one of the few McDonald's that had a Ronald animatronic, and it was very easy to understand why. It was really scary. His empty eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went, and his engraved laughter was so metrical I couldn't understand how a child who saw it wouldn't start crying and leave the restaurant. But worst of all, Ronald seemed to be moving. This animatronic was not supposed to move. I slowly approached to control him. I knew it couldn't move and that it was probably all part of my imagination, but even so, I did it just to be safe. The animatronic was still as creepy as ever, but it wasn't moving, so I left the playground and went back to my companions before they finished their schedules. After that, the evening proceeded normally. Little by little, my companions began to leave and leave me alone for the last hour. It was my first time I'd done the closing alone, but I'd been working there for a while, and honestly, I felt ready to do it. Just in case, my coworkers reminded me of the procedure I had to follow to make sure my boss wouldn't scold me the next day, and even stayed a little longer to make sure everything went smoothly. For the last 30 minutes of work, it was safe to say that I was completely alone. This McDonald's was relatively small, so it was to be expected that almost no one would come in at that time, so I was focused on cleaning up and making sure I had a good closing. Just before I left, with only a few minutes left, I hurried to finish cleaning the game area, and that's when I noticed something really strange. The animatronics, that Ronald animatronics that had disturbed me before, seemed to be in a different position. At that moment, I thought that someone had surely moved it, but why would they do it? To play a joke on me? It couldn't be. It was too subtle to be a joke, and it was very likely that I wouldn't even realize it. Besides, how would they have done it? I got a little closer to Ronald to examine him closely, and at that moment, I got the scare of my life.
Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald.
Oh my god! Oh, what a scare you gave me, you piece of junk!
Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald. Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald. Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald.
Oh, come on, did you break down? How do you turn this thing off? Okay, that's enough Ronald McDonald for today. Ah, great, more work. I must admit that the power outage had really caught me off guard. I thought about cleaning up, but I really couldn't, and it was almost time for me to leave, so I had every right to let people know what was going on and grab my stuff. I grabbed my cell phone and turned on the flashlight. The place definitely looked a lot more gloomy with a small spotlight illuminating the dark place. I locked the door to make sure no customers were coming in and went to get the cleaning supplies I had forgotten in the game room, and that's when I noticed something terrifying. Ronald's animatronic, it was gone. I quickly looked at the floor to see if it had fallen down, but that didn't make sense. How could something so big fall down without making noise? I pointed the flashlight everywhere, but it wasn't there. It was simply nowhere to be found. In my worst moment of confusion, I heard a voice coming from the bathroom door. That voice was very familiar.
Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald.
I quickly pointed to the source of the sound, and that's when I saw it. The animatronic was there, standing in the dark next to the bathroom door, staring in my direction with red eyes. No. This can't be happening.
Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald!
Frozen, I could only watch as the animatronic that seemed to be broken repeated his name constantly, until I saw something else that made me forget about him. Hidden behind the huge figure of the animatronic, looking at me from the shoulder of the robot, there was someone else. It was almost imperceptible, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. It was a silhouette, like a shadow with fiery eyes and huge fangs. I could distinguish how his face was black but with red spots and a horrible snake tongue that stretched out as if provoking me. At that moment, I was paralyzed with fear, and the next words of the animatronics I heard were much closer.
Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald. Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald. Hey kids, I'm Ronald McDonald.
Before I knew it, the animatronic was running towards me at full speed. His arms were up, going for my neck. That Ronald-shaped animatronic was planning to choke me. My only reaction was to close my eyes in fear, and that's when a beam of light pierced my eyebrows. Confused and still terrified, I opened my eyes again. The light had returned, and in front of me, where Ronald's animatronic had come from to attack me, there was nothing. When I turned around, Ronald's animatronics were still in their usual position, without moving, but with a big difference. His head was in another position. It was looking at me. As soon as my body could react again, I grabbed all my things and left the place as soon as possible, never to return. The next day, I handed in my resignation. What was I going to do? Tell them that Ronald comes to life during the night? Insinuate that there was a demon in McDonald's? All I tried to do was ask some of my other coworkers if they saw anything strange on the night shift, but they were very confused by my question. Apparently, only I experienced something like that in that McDonald's. And you know, I know what I saw. It may be several years later, but I still don't walk anywhere near that place. Just because I'm the only person who has ever seen that animatronic in action, doesn't mean that no one else ever will. And when that happens, maybe that person won't be able to tell their story like I am now.
Hola! That means hello in Spanish. Hey, Happy Meal guys! It's a great day for a picnic, isn't it?
At McDonald's Land, it's always a great day for a picnic.
You're right, but today our picnic is going to be a bit different than the ones we've had before.